Well, NFL Week 17 is in the books, and if you don't have a franchise quarterback, if you don't have a starting quarterback in this league, a true starter, I'm not talking about your run of the mill. You're not going to the playoffs, you're not winning a Super Bowl, and you probably shouldn't even try. And last night, watching Kenny Pickett, I know he's only, he's 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. But I think the Steelers have a legit, they have a legit starter in Kenny Pickett. They have a legit franchise quarterback in Kenny Pickett. So I'm very excited to talk about NFL Sunday. My favorite team, for those of you who are new here, is the Los Angeles Rams, and they did not, obviously look great, but it's a new day, and, just excited to talk about the rest of the league. We go in the Steelers game, I thought was really entertaining. I mean, look, it wasn't a high-scoring game, but the Steelers-Ravens, we've come to know, is never a high-scoring game, right? It just never is. Those two are always going to play a defensive battle, and, I enjoyed watching it. I think when you have two teams that are just so justified in their defensive approach, that's what you get. Now, Lamar Jackson is not healthy. The Ravens don't look like the Ravens, but the Steelers, you can't take anything away from them. Going on the road, winning that game was absolutely huge. And just a lot of respect to Mike Tomlin, who will finish yet another season in the NFL without going and having a losing record. He is one of the best coaches in football. He's one of the best coaches ever. I really think Mike Tomlin is just, very underrated, just because of his ability, whether it's been Devlin Hodges, whether it's been Kenny Pickett, a rookie, Mitch Trubisky, you name it. It hasn't always been Ben Roethlisberger, and he's just made it work. And so, I give a big shout out to, Mike Tomlin there. He's just done an incredible job as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's why they're 8-8 after starting off the season 3-7. And it's why that they are one game away, with some help, of course, for the potential to go to the NFL playoffs yet again. Looking at throughout the week, though, that was a great win. And once again, Kenny Pickett going down the field, leading a comeback and leading a game winning touchdown. Beautiful throw off script against his body. You love to see that from a rookie quarterback. Just that clutch gene that he possesses. It's just very impressive. So, shout out to him. He's really turned my head. I know 6 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I know what people are thinking, but the Steelers have a guy. Okay. And he may not win a Super Bowl this year. He doesn't need to. He's got a lot of time, and I think he looks very good, despite what the stats may show. We started off the week for the NFL on Thursday. Per usual, the Cowboys beat the Titans without Malik Willis. It was Josh Dobbs, who didn't look half bad. The Cowboys don't strike me as a team that's dominant enough to feel like, look, this team can win a Super Bowl. I don't really see that from Dallas. I see a team that just hasn't quite figured out a way to be consistent. They win games. They lose games. They don't dominate teams as much as I would like them to. So there's that there. The Jets and Seahawks game was very disappointing. The Jets continue their largest playoff drought in the NFL actively, with 12 straight years. They missed the playoffs after the Seattle Seahawks eliminated them from playoff contention. That game, what can you say? I mean, Seattle, really just dominated from the get-go. And once again, the theme of the day, franchise quarterback, having a quarterback. The Jets don't have a franchise quarterback. It's not Zach Wilson. It's not Mike White. It's definitely not Joe Flacco. There is not a single guy on that team that I would want starting next year if I'm the Jets. I think they have a legit team around that quarterback. I think they've dealt with injuries on the offensive line. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a quarterback, then you're not going to go very far. And I think it's time to just, remove all of that and realize the Jets don't have a quarterback. Breece Hall, before he went down with the injury, rookie running back at Iowa State, Breece Hall was leading the league in rushing. To not have him sucked, but the Jets continued to push through. They just did not have a quarterback, and that really hurt them. With the Rams and Chargers game, the Chargers won 31-10. I thought you saw some really good things from the Chargers. Their ability to finish games has been a little bit of a suspect thing for that team. I don't think they are as great as their record is, but this was a good win for them. They got Austin Eckler going on the ground. Justin Herbert looked great, as usual. But also, you can see that Keenan Allen connection, just the fact that he's back, it's really working out, I would say, for them. That is their best receiver. He's one of the most underrated receivers in all of football. They got Joey Bosa back. So the Chargers are in good form going to the playoffs. They're not a team I'm necessarily worried about if I'm playing them. But credit to Brandon Staley for propelling his team to the postseason. As for the Rams side of things, the only redeeming quality of that game seemed to have been Cam Akers on the ground. Have they found their RB1 after all this time? Who knows? I think right now you have to feel, good about Cam Akers, but at the same time, he's been a guy that's all about consistency. If he can keep this up, he's absolutely going to be the starter next year for the Rams. But it's hard to know. So I would say he's the RB1 next year, but you go in with some caution. You don't just give it right to him. You have him, you have Kyron Williams. Maybe you go and you draft a running back late in the draft, and then you call it a day. But as far as that goes, the Rams learned, pretty quickly that, look, last week was great. But they definitely took last week as like the finale because they didn't look ready for this game at all. Defense was not impressive by any stretch, and that really hurt them. They were able to move the ball, and I thought Sean McVay was a better play caller in that game, but just, something I noticed. Now, the Falcons and Cardinals game, I need to let you guys know something in case you don't. And, feel free to drop a comment or anything like that. I'm happy to engage and interact with you guys. But something I got to say, okay? Tyler Algier is quietly having a really good rookie year at running back. The former BYU running back is almost at 1,000 yards in his first season. You would never know that. They have Cordell Patterson, who is a very good back in his own right. But Algier is somebody that, he scored a touchdown again. He helped lead the Falcons to a win. Desmond Ridder picks up the win over the Arizona Cardinals, who started David Blau. Trey McBride, another rookie, actually was able to get going with 7 catches for 78 and a touchdown. But this game just kind of shows you, Algier's one of those running backs that you're going to have to, keep an eye on, moving forward. I'm a really big fan of his game, the way he runs with that bowling ball mentality. And, I think you saw that, on display throughout this season. So the Falcons found something, and it's just a reminder, you don't need to draft a running back as early as the first round. Okay. You really don't. You got to get a guy like Todd Gurley or Bijan Robinson, who I think could be that level. You need an elite guy if you're going to draft in the first round. Okay. You cannot afford to spend a premium on that. Right. So shout out to the Falcons. That was value there. Looking at the next game here that I have on my list, the Lions and Bears. The Lions absolutely crushed the Bears 41-10. I mean, look, the Lions are the one team. They lost, 7 games early on in the season, but they're that one team where if they make the playoffs, they can literally beat anybody. And I would say, if anyone's going to knock off San Francisco in that first round, if San Francisco hangs on to the 2 seed, it's going to be the Lions. I don't think the Packers are going to do it, and I definitely don't think Seattle has a chance in hell. Now, this is the time to talk a little bit about the playoffs and, what this entails. Because when you look at the Lions, they're 8-8, and they play Green Bay next week. Green Bay, they win the game, and Green Bay, they're in. They control their own destiny. Seattle, unfortunately, has the tiebreaker over the Lions. So essentially, the Lions need to win this game against the Packers, and they need the LA Rams to do them a favor and knock off Seattle in Seattle. Not an easy task. And if, anybody's going to knock off the Niners, I really do believe it's going to be Detroit. I think Green Bay could. I'm not confident in them doing it, but I think they could. I have no faith in Seattle. I just don't. They've faced each other twice, and I just think the 49ers are just a lot better. The thing with the Lions is they're better than the record would indicate. They've gotten hot, and just this is a team that can score points in bunches. And, when you get the game that you had out of Jamal Williams on the ground, on Sunday, DeAndre Swift, they went over 250 rushing yards. Jared Goff threw 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So, I just feel like this is the team, especially because their defense has improved. This is the team that if anybody's going to knock off the 49ers at the 2 seed, it's going to be the Lions. And so, I think the hope is for football fans, unless you're a Niners fan, football fans should be rooting for Jared Goff and company to go to the playoffs. I mean, Dan Campbell, it's a good story. They've fought hard, and I've been a big believer in Dan Campbell going back to his time as an interim head coach for the Dolphins. I saw the way that they kind of changed their tune, and I felt like he had a future. And while he didn't become a head coach right after, he did end up becoming a head coach down the line. And I think he's done a nice job. I don't think he gets enough credit. And I don't think people took him seriously because he's got an unorthodox approach to talking to the media. It doesn't make him bad. But that's how I look at it. So I think, this Lions team, the defense is starting to play well. They have a ton of weapons, and Goff is playing good, mistake-free football. This is Lions team you don't want to play against. And I'll say this right now. Jared Goff has not played poorly in Green Bay. When he was on the Rams in the 2020 to 2021 playoffs, he had a valiant effort. Didn't have much of an offensive line. That is not the case in Detroit. But he had a valiant effort in his last game as a Ram and, gave them a chance to potentially win that game. So I don't know. I know it's Green Bay. I know it's going to be tough to go there and win, but and Green Bay is playing well. But I got the Lions in that game. I think the Lions are going to come out next week, and I think they're going to win that game on the road. They're the better team, and I think they're going to show that. And it really comes down to the Rams and Seahawks, which I kind of feel like Seattle's going to win. So, unfortunately, I feel like we're going to see Seattle and, San Francisco in the first round of the playoffs. And I really just don't know. I don't feel like that is going to be much of a game. I feel like that's a 20-point blowout by the 49ers at the very least. I'm not very sold on Seattle by any stretch. So that's about as simple as I can make that. Moving on. Okay. We got the Chiefs and the Broncos game. Everyone was saying how, the Rams beat a team that's not very good. The Broncos aren't good, whatever. Broncos went on the road and almost took down Kansas City. It's a game of, really just any given Sunday, right? I mean, that's the type of sport that you're dealing with the NFL. And, valiant effort by the Broncos. They fired their coach, Nathaniel Hackett, and almost instantaneously they were more competitive. That's not the best look, and the stock game is definitely down for Coach Hackett. But what I will say is that I was confused by the game plan here for the Kansas City Chiefs. They didn't try to run the ball at all. Instead, they tried to throw all over the yard against Denver. Denver actually had a rare interception of Patrick Mahomes. They also ran well with Latavius Murray, but they kind of stopped running the ball there. Just not really sure. There's like this epidemic that's going around the NFL where even if you have success running the ball and pounding the rock, you don't consistently do it. And I don't know why, for the life of me. I think everyone is so focused on, okay, this is, it's that time, right? Like it's the passing era. But running the ball is what's allowed the Lions to make things easier on Jared Goff. It's what allowed them to score so many points. Look at what they're doing with DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. I feel like, honestly, the Lions and Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, are doing it better than anybody because right now they have the most balanced offense in the NFL, and we're seeing results because of that. The Chiefs, even though they have, Patrick Mahomes, and that's great, I still feel like this offense should be better. I know it sounds weird to say, Mahomes just threw for 5,000 yards. He's got 40 touchdowns. I feel like this offense should be better. And when I'm watching Isaiah Pacheco, I don't know. I feel like Pacheco should be getting the carries more. I like the way they use Jerick McKinnon, but they got to pound the rock more. And I think it would unleash the passing game on a whole other level. That's personally what I believe, but, who knows, whatever. I just feel like when you look at this team, I feel like they're most likely the Super Bowl favorites right now, the Kansas City Chiefs, but I feel like they can be even better. And I just think when you look around the league, there are these teams that just don't run the ball enough. The Buffalo Bills. Devin Singletary is having a very good season. He's not going to hit 1,000 yards, but he very well could have, and he's having a efficient year. And I feel like they just run the ball too much with Josh Allen. They let him run. I just feel like run the ball, use your running backs in this league. Look at what the Rams have been doing with Cam Akers. He's leading the league in rushing over the last, I think, 4 or 5 games. I just look at the way, the Chargers ran with Austin Eckler. I just think like the Lions, the Rams, the Chargers run the ball like that, and you can win any game. Last night, the Steelers, we talked about earlier, Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, the rookie, carried that team. Now, Kenny Pickett came through at the end, but those two ran the ball. So give the Steelers a lot of credit for just pounding the rock against a team that in the last 15 quarters hadn't allowed a touchdown in the Baltimore Ravens. And the last time that they played the Pittsburgh Steelers, they allowed under 70 rushing yards. The Steelers are just like, we're just going to go at it. We're just going to pound the rock, run the football, and win this game. And that's what they did. And so, I just feel like when you look at the way this league is, I know it's a passing league and all of that, but you very much can run the football. And I honestly think I would prefer to run the ball more, if I had an elite quarterback, because I think it just makes it easier. I think it opens up the field more. You already know that Patrick Mahomes can play. But what's dangerous is now if Isaiah Pacheco can pound the rock and run all over you, how are you stopping a defense like that? I don't know. We move on to the next game, which was likely the end of the journey for the Miami Dolphins. Very, disappointing season for them. They looked like a can't-miss playoff team, but what plagued them, Tua Tagovailoa's injuries, mainly his concussion issues, which, that's serious. I hope he'll be okay. Miami did fall to third place in the division after this loss. And their inability to win on the road, they only won 3 games this year out of 9 on the road. New England came away with the win, 23-21, capped off by Kyle Duggar. His interception came at a huge time. The Patriots do control their own destiny, just like the Green Bay Packers. So they are the 7th seed. They can do this thing, and they didn't really run the ball a lot with Ramondre Stevenson, but Mac Jones played very efficient football. He threw a touchdown to Tyquan Thornton, a guy that they really liked coming out of the draft, and Jacoby Myers. This is definitely a team that just feels like they're going to get just trounced in the first round of the playoffs. They have some good games here. They have some good games there. But at the end of the day, I don't love this team. They forced 2 interceptions. Their defense is feisty. They got Matt Judon and they got Josh Uche off the line, off the edge, if you will. But I still just don't love this team at all. And I think this was more of a factor, the fact the Dolphins almost won this game on the road without Tua Tagovailoa. I just don't think that I'm not very high on the New England Patriots this year. I do feel like it would be the same if, the New England Patriots end up playing the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be the same freaking thing. Okay. It's going to be a blowout. I don't think any of us want to see it. So, that's that. Now we move on to the next game here, and it is the New York Giants taking on the Indianapolis Colts. I have no idea what Indy's doing. I really don't. I think they're just tanking at this point. Nick Foles should never be playing. He is not very good. Sam Ehlinger came in through a touchdown. They might have had a chance with the Chargers if Sam Ehlinger played last week, but they got Zach Moss in one of the most bizarre trades ever. I still don't know why the Bills traded for Nyheim Hines and don't even use him. But this was a big win for the Giants. This put them in the playoffs. They clinched the playoffs. Daniel Jones looks good. I think Daniel Jones is set as the future quarterback for the Giants, whether you believe in him or not. The Giants do. Isaiah Hodgins looks like one of the best pickups of the year. They got him off of waivers, and man, he caught another touchdown. He has been a model of consistency for them, finding the end zone. They didn't get a great game out of Saquon Barkley by any stretch, but they made do, and they won 38-10. And now the Giants are moving on. And, what's crazy is at one point or another, I thought the Commanders were going to, take over that spot. They lose that game in prime time against the Giants, and then they get eliminated. And crazy enough, if you guys don't know the story on this one, they got eliminated by the Cleveland Browns at home. And get this, Ron Rivera, their head coach, did not know they could be eliminated. He didn't know. He had no idea. So I know there's a lot of people, really pounding it all over Wentz, and Wentz had a really bad game. Let me just say that. But I didn't mind him starting over Heineke. I think he's better than Heineke. I think he had a bad game. I think the Browns came in with a great game plan. Deshaun Watson finally looked comfortable, connecting twice to Amari Cooper, once to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Nick Chubb made it look easy, 104 yards on 14 carries. And I just think at the end of the day with this game, this was more, I think the Browns really starting to come into their own. They're not a bad team. They got a good roster. They're a paper tiger, essentially. But with Washington, I think they lost their juice. I think they lost their momentum. They had that when they were winning those games that Heineke. And I just think they lost it. To lose 24-10 in a game where you're facing elimination, I feel like that's just motivation. That's lack thereof. So I don't know. I definitely expected more out of the Washington Commanders, but, that's that. A team that I didn't expect a lot out of was the New Orleans Saints, and they just won a pretty big game until, of course, the Packers won and eliminated them for the playoffs. But 20-10 over the number one seed in the NFC. This is a big win for the New Orleans Saints. I think Gardner Minshew obviously wished he played a little bit better. They had a hard time protecting him. This is a really good offensive line, but for whatever reason, they had a hard time protecting him. And for whatever reason, this Eagles team, Miles Sanders ran the ball very well, and they just, for whatever reason, did not want to continue running the ball with him. 12 carries for 61 yards. That was it. One thing I'll say about this game that really stood out to me was the officiating. Just an awful call. If you guys didn't see, it was absolutely terrible. So Landon Dickerson, the offensive lineman, pancakes this guy. Just full on textbook, pounds him into the ground. If you guys saw it, then you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, listen to this. So he shoves him down in the ground, perfect pancake, lands on him, and Boston Scott runs for a touchdown, right? So you're thinking, okay, that's great. Actually, I think it was Kenneth Gainwell. Anyway, so Gainwell runs for a touchdown, and the refs blow the whistle, and they say that there was a holding on Landon Dickerson. It was the most textbook block you could have, and they threw a flag for holding. I don't know, guys. I think it's gotten to the point where the officiating has just been so bad. Do you even know the rules? I mean, you do not have any jurisdiction to be officiating a game if you don't know the difference between a pancake block and a hold. Just a really, really bad look by the officiating in 2022 to 2023. And I just don't see it getting any better because, once again, they do not get held accountable. They don't. The officiating, they don't get held accountable. They still make a decent wage. They don't have to talk, to the media. You get fined if you complain about them. That was an awful call that took away points off the board for the Philadelphia Eagles in a game where they lost by 10. It's a completely different game if they don't do that. That's a serious call to miss. So I don't know. I'm not saying I'm all about, saying the Eagles got robbed of winning. I mean, you got to score more than 10 points, but just watching that in real time, really disgusted with, the officiating there. The next game here, Carolina had a chance to make the playoffs. They cannot win on the road, and that continued. 1-6 on the road this year. They lost to the Buccaneers, who have somehow sneaked their way to 8-8. I don't think there's any team in this conference, or rather this division, that's any good. Okay, Atlanta doesn't look great. Carolina's not great. New Orleans isn't great, and Tampa's really not great. So this is a product of the fact that, look, you're playing the NFC South. Tampa wins. But I got to give credit where credit's due. Tom Brady was phenomenal. They had a chance to clinch a division berth and go back to the playoffs, and Tom Brady absolutely blew up for 432 yards, 3 touchdowns, including 207 of those to Mike Evans for 3 touchdowns. He was great. And they needed it because they couldn't run the ball against Carolina's stout defense. Leonard Fournette, 10 carries, 28 yards. Okay. Rachaad White, 11 carries, 22 yards. So they couldn't get anything on the ground. They needed, obviously a passing attack, and Brady helped them out. I think credit needs to go to Sam Darnold. Very quietly, no one is talking about Sam Darnold, but he had 341 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had an interception at the end. But Sam Darnold's season right now, 1,100 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I can't say for sure that Carolina has found their guy, but I can say that Sam Darnold definitely deserves to come back and compete for a starting job next year. I think he's done a very good job in a limited amount of time. He hasn't made a lot of poor decisions. And I think he's playing really good football towards the end of the year. So I think you definitely have to keep that in mind. Gammon, thank you so much for donating. And also, let's see here. Chacho, thank you so much for donating as well. I just saw those come across. Moving on, the Jaguars continued their dominating ways. They're a completely changed team at the end of this year. They win 31-3 against the Texans. And the thing about this team right now, and keep in mind, they had lost 9 straight against Houston coming into this game. So, really no one bought into, there were a lot of bettors that were taking the Texans +3 or whatever. I kind of knew it was going to be a rout. The Jaguars really just dominated them, and that's what they're going to continue to do, I think. I think they're going to outplay the Titans in a big way. They are a win and you're in type of deal, right? The Jaguars win and they're in. If they lose, they still have a shot with tiebreakers and all that to make the 7th seed wild card. But if the Titans lose, they're done. They have no chance. They did not win on Thursday. So that's that. Trevor Lawrence didn't look great in this game, but didn't matter because the defense did, and Travis Etienne did, and JaMychal Hasty did, and Snoop Conner looked pretty solid. So they got contribution out of the run game, and the Jaguars looked really good, and they're ready. They're ready for a playoff run. I'm not saying that they're going to have one, but they're ready for it. And I think it's a credit to Doug Peterson, who has proven that the Eagles never should have gotten rid of him. They got lucky that they found Nick Sirianni, but Doug Peterson's a damn good coach. He's getting the most out of Trevor Lawrence, and he's turned that team into something to watch. So I'm not saying the Jaguars are going to win it all or anything like that, But that 4-5 game, because I think they're going to be in the playoffs. If it's Jaguars and Chargers, I'm taking the Jags, right? If it's Jaguars and Ravens, I'm probably taking the Jags. So basically I think the Jags win the first round of the playoffs right now. Right now, that's where I'm standing, because you can say that Trevor Lawrence doesn't have that experience, but these guys don't have experience. I feel like Doug Peterson makes up. Obviously, Super Bowl winning head coach. I'm a big fan of what he's done. Transformative job. Definitely a coach of the year candidate for sure. You got to give him his props. The next game we had, the 49ers come away with a 37-34 overtime win over the Raiders. This game made no sense at all. Look, I understand the 49ers weren't at home, but Jarrett Stidham throwing 365 yards and 3 touchdowns in his first career start against one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in all of football, is not something I expected. 2 touchdowns to Devontae Adams. He had a blow-up game, 7 catches for 153 yards. Darren Waller had a touchdown, and Josh Jacobs, he didn't run that well because really the 49ers run defense has been very good. So look, Niners come away with the win. They still have a shot at the 1 seed. They need some things to go their way, but because the Eagles lost, I do believe they have a shot at the 1 seed. If not, regardless, they got the 2 seed. They took it right from Minnesota. And they're in good position to hold on to that 2 seed. Minnesota has gotten blown out by every good team they've played except for the Bills. So I'm not really sure what to make of Minnesota. I'm really not sure what to make of them, and we'll get to them in a sec. But this 49ers team, very talented, and they should be considered the favorites in the NFC to win the Super Bowl. I'm just saying right now, not everyone's going to want to hear it. I think the 49ers are the best team right now in the NFC. The Eagles with Jalen Hurts, it's an argument, but I think those are the 2 best teams. And right now, I don't even think Minnesota is in that tier. I was very high on them coming into the season. I had them going, I think 14-3 or 13-4, which they might actually end up doing exactly. But this team just does not feel very good. They feel like, the record is the record, but and the thing about them, to be fair, they're undefeated in 1 possession games. But the problem is, if they play a team like the Niners or the Eagles in the playoffs, I don't see that being a 1 possession game. I see those 2 destroying them, honestly. So I don't know, because the next game, Packers 41-17 over the Vikings, inexcusable. I don't know how you have a chance, at the 1 seed here, and you just lay an egg to your rival on the road. I don't get it. Justin Jefferson had 1 catch for 15 yards. Jalen Naylor was the receiving leader for Minnesota. The leading rusher was Alex Madison. This is what I don't understand. This team just abandoned the run outright. Kirk Cousins threw 3 touchdowns. Okay, this game was an absolute trouncing, and Aaron Rodgers only threw 1 touchdown pass in a game where they won 41-17. Special teams doing a lot. I thought Jair Alexander did an outstanding job completely neutralizing Justin Jefferson. Look, I mean, the Packers needed wins. They're getting them. They're getting good at the right time. So, that's that. I got to say that, right? So that's how it looks so far through 17 weeks. So that was the week. Right now, the playoff standings as seeded. The AFC, the Chiefs have the 1 seed. The Bills have the 2. The Bengals have the 3. The Jaguars have the 4. The Chargers have the 5. The Ravens have the 6. And the Patriots have the 7. The only team still remaining in the AFC, the Titans, only to win the division. I don't believe they can't make the wild card, but they can win the division. The Jaguars, if they lose, can still get in with the wild card tiebreaker. The Patriots, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Miami Dolphins. That means in the NFC, we have the Eagles, 1 seed, the Niners, the 2 seed, the Vikings the 3 seed, the Bucs the 4 seed, the Cowboys the 5th seed, the Giants the 6th seed, and 7 seed the Seattle Seahawks. As it stands right now, the only teams still remaining in the NFC that are alive, the Lions, the Packers, and Seattle. No team can move up to the 6th seed, so it's all a battle for the 7th seed. It's also worth noting, since the 7th seed was introduced, 7th seed is 0-4 in the playoffs. So it's not very likely you're going to win. Because going up against the 2 seed, you're talking about the 49ers. That's not an easy feat. And going up against potentially Buffalo or Cincinnati is not easy either. Let's be honest there. So that is that. In those games, as of right now, the Chiefs would have the bye. The Bills would play the Patriots. I think the Bills would absolutely roll over the Patriots. I think the Bengals would take down the Ravens, and I think the Jaguars would beat the Chargers, which means that if that happened, we'd be looking at the Bills and the Jaguars and the Bengals. So the Chiefs would play the Jaguars. I'll take the Chiefs in that. The Bills would play the Bengals. I will take the Bengals in that because right now I think the Bengals are hot. I think they're going to win tonight. And I think the Bills are starting to kind of fall off a little bit. They're not quite the team I expected. Even though they're 12-3, I feel like the Bills the Bengals are getting hot at the right time. So then you're probably going to have a rematch of the AFC title game between the Chiefs and Bengals, and I think the Chiefs win the game. I think they get a rematch, and I think they win. In the NFC, you have the Eagles taking on nobody. They would have a bye. So it'd be the 49ers and Seattle right now. I'm taking the 49ers by at least 20. Don't see that game being close. The Vikings and Giants, I'm going to take the Vikings. It was a close game the first time. The Vikings came through. I think the Vikings will win that game again, mainly because I think they'll keep it close. And the Vikings I trust in close games. I just don't trust them against really good teams that can blow them out of the water. So I'll take the Vikings there. And then I'm gonna take the Cowboys in Tampa. I don't think the Buccaneers are very good, and I do think the Cowboys are good. So I'll take the Cowboys there. Then you're looking at Eagles, Cowboys in the next round, and the 49ers taking on the Vikings. I got the Niners over the Vikings, the Eagles over the Cowboys, and then I'm gonna say the Eagles pull it off against the 49ers. I think they win a real close one, but that could go either way. So I think it's going to be Chiefs-Eagles. It's the Andy Reid Bowl. And, that's how I have it right now. Could that change? Absolutely. I mean, if the Lions, push their way into the 7th seed, maybe it changes the outcome of the 49ers game, which changes everything. If it's the Packers, who knows? I don't think any 7th seed in the AFC is going to be able to take down a 2 seed in the AFC. I just don't. I think the only thing I would say is that the Jaguars lose out on the 4 seed and fall to the 7th. They still could be pretty dangerous to the Bills. They could still be pretty dangerous to the Bengals. But the Steelers, I don't see it. I think they could play ugly football. Keep it a low scoring game. Run the ball at Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and then maybe Kenny Pickett with his clutch gene gives you a chance at the end. But that's not one I'm willing to bet on. And I don't think the Patriots are going to do much. So that's just kind of how I see the playoffs looking, going into that. Now I want to talk about something a little different. All right. I cannot for the life of me, because I know there are probably some USC fans out there. I cannot for the life of me understand why everyone is picking Tulane to win this game. Caleb Williams is good to go. I think Tulane's good. I think they deserve credit, but I honestly felt like this was kind of a slap in the face to USC to have to play Tulane. They didn't get to play Alabama. They didn't get to play at Kansas State. I felt like they kind of just were like, oh, USC, they only lost to one team this year twice, and their quarterback got hurt, and the other time they lost on a 2-point conversion. But we're going to fit them against Tulane, who's the number 16 in the country. Felt like it was kind of a slap in the face. Not even going to lie. So I think USC is going to win this game by at least 3, which would cover the 2.5. But I see a lot of people that are picking Tulane, and I don't know why. I don't think Tulane's bad. I don't. But I just don't see this being as great of a game as people are saying. USC, it doesn't have the defense Tulane does, but at the same time, USC plays in the Pac-12, and Tulane simply doesn't play in a great conference. So, that's something to keep in mind. This game is at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is kind of odd. So I guess it's coming up soon. But Caleb Williams is good to go. Tulane's won some good games. They beat UCF. They beat Cincinnati. They beat SMU. Then they lost to UCF, and they beat Tulsa. USC has won 4 of their last 5. They lost to Utah in that game where, look, they were winning the game. Caleb Williams gets hurt, and they had a hard time, finishing that game strong. But I don't know for the life of me why that so many people are picking Tulane to beat USC. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it. I mean, I think Tulane is a good team. I think the running back, Spears, is somebody to look out for. He had a monster season, almost 1,400 yards on the ground, 15 touchdowns. He's somebody to look out for. The defense could struggle against. I think their quarterback, Pratt, is solid, but I don't think he's great. And I just think when you have a guy like Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison, especially just Caleb Williams, and he's good to go. He's going to be playing in this game. I don't see how you pick against Caleb Williams. If he's good to go and he's cleared by doctors, why would you go against him? I don't know. I certainly wouldn't bet against him. I wouldn't bet against USC in this. I think they're pissed off. They should be. They got thrown into this Cotton Bowl game against Tulane. They didn't get to play Alabama or Clemson or Tennessee. Somehow Clemson's rated ahead of them. Tennessee's rated ahead of them. Ridiculous. If I'm USC, I'm furious. So wouldn't be surprised if they just turn Tulane into a punching bag. But I think it'll be like, I'm going to say USC wins this game 37-31. That's what I'll say. USC wins this game 37-31. I think they're the better team. I think they cover that spread, and I think they win the game. So I wanted to get that off my chest. I wanted to talk about it. I wasn't going to get too detailed into it, but I just don't know why, for the life of me, USC isn't getting the credit they deserve. I don't know. But so with the NFL going on right now, the playoffs are coming up and everything. I've had a lot of time to kind of reflect from the season, what we've learned. And this is going to be more of a Rams segment. So for you Rams fans out there, you're welcome. Look, I've heard a lot about I would do anything for a Super Bowl. Okay. I'd do anything for a Super Bowl. I can't fault the Rams for going all in and mortgaging their future and, whatever. I've heard that so many times. So many times have I heard mortgaging the future, all in, right? Being reckless, F them picks. I've heard it all. I'm kind of over it. I'm over it because it's not entirely true. And it doesn't exactly reflect why the Rams they just, set the record for most losses by a defending Super Bowl champion in a season. Being 5-11 is not something I expected. I don't think many people expected it. But you have to do your homework because you sound like a moron if you don't. That's with anything. People will say fake it till you make it. It doesn't work that way. Because the people that aren't faking it, the people that are doing the research, they're going to call you out. And they should. And so with the Rams, you have people saying this team mortgaged the future. And I brought it up yesterday on my JE Live show, and I'm like, what did they mortgage? What was the future? Are you saying trading with Jared Goff was the future? Jared Goff was not the future. because they didn't buy into Jared Goff. That was the whole point of the trade for Matthew Stafford. What I find funny is, if anything, it just shows you, and if you watched the game yesterday, the Chargers and Rams game, then you heard it all. But it shows you how the Chargers get viewed in a different light than the Rams. The Chargers, they're winning games. I get it. But why are we bringing up their injuries? They're winning games. Who cares? We're bringing up their injuries. We're giving them an excuse. The Rams, their excuse is that, they won a Super Bowl. It's F them picks. It's F them picks. I would do the same thing. They mortgaged the future. No, they didn't mortgage the future. They have a first-round pick in 2024, so hate to break it to you, but that little comedy bit that you do about, the Rams won't have a pick until I'm 45. No, hate to break it to you, but they're going to have one next year. Then they have picks, and they don't hate picks. I think that's stupid too. So I wanted to bring it up because, talking about trading and talking about F them picks and going all in and all of that, I don't honestly feel like you can fully go all in the NFL. I don't think it's possible. I don't think football with 53 players on a roster, this is not a sport you can go all in with. Now, basketball is. When you want to talk about going all in, bring up the Anthony Davis trade. Okay, the Lakers, everybody they traded to get Anthony Davis, that was going all in, and it worked. They won a title. If your argument for the Lakers right now is, that was nice, now they don't have depth, they don't have a bench, they don't have shooting, they went all in for Anthony Davis, and then they went all in trading for Russ Westbrook. Okay, that's fine. That's your argument. Okay, cool. Well, it's wrong with the NFL because all in would have to mean you don't have the most draft picks on a roster, which last year, by the way, they did. Another thing I constantly hear is, and they said during the broadcast yesterday, the Rams they went out and they got all these guys in free agency. Who did they sign in free agency last year? They didn't sign until OBJ. Their biggest free agent was, I don't even remember who it was. They don't really sign free agents. This year they did. They got Allen Robinson. They got Bobby Wagner. But that's not going all in. And last time I checked, free agency doesn't mean you have to give up picks either. So it's all stupid to me. Going all in basketball is a lot easier because you only have 17 guys on a roster. You can only play 15 in a game, and you can only play 5 at once on a court. So if you go all in, that makes sense. You go out, you get a superstar in Anthony Davis, you give up 3, 4, 5 players and a bunch of picks. Okay, you went all in. It worked, but you went all in. The Rams going and getting Matthew Stafford for only 2 firsts and a third and Jared Goff, that's not going all in. How is it going all in if they trade away a guy they did not have any use for? They were moving on from Jared Goff. They traded 2 first-round draft picks, which they did the same thing to acquire Jalen Ramsey. So you mean to tell me that they traded Jared Goff, who they didn't want? They got his contract off the books. They traded 2 first-rounders, which they already did for Jalen Ramsey, and an additional third. And they got the same, they almost gave up the same as Ramsey if you take away Goff, because they were just trying to get rid of him. That wasn't an asset. That was a guy that they were just trying to get rid of. You're telling me that they got Matthew Stafford, they got their franchise quarterback who would win them a Super Bowl for almost the same package they got for Rams. I mean, that's the thing that I don't think people talk about enough. You would make that trade all day. It's like the same trade as Jalen Ramsey's. If you take away Jared Goff, it's like the same thing. And Matthew Stafford was a big deal. And if Matthew Stafford doesn't get hurt this year, I think there's a good chance the Rams are still maybe fighting for the playoffs in week 18. Because let's not forget, he got hurt in that Saints game, which they were winning when he got hurt. And in that Saints game, you have to keep this in mind. They go 3-7 after that game. They're 3-6 going into that game. They win that game. Now they're 4-6. They play Kansas City with Stafford. Rams had a good game plan. They shut down Kansas City in the red zone. That's the best red zone offense in the league. They held them in check. Maybe they win with Stafford. Maybe not. So maybe they're 4-7. They definitely beat Seattle, who they lost by on the last play of the game to. So they'd be 5-7 there. They beat the Raiders. That'd be 6-7. They might have beaten the Packers, but we'll say 6-8. Definitely beat the Broncos. That's 7-8. I think with Stafford, I think they beat the Chargers. That would have been 8-8. And then they would be facing the Seattle Seahawks, who would be 7-9 going into this game, with the potential to go to the playoffs with Matthew Stafford. And so that's the thing. Now they'll have Matthew Stafford next year, and he's not retiring. But I wanted to bring it up because I hear way more about the Rams mortgaging the future than I do about the Browns mortgaging the future. Than I do about, what's the other big trade? The Broncos mortgaging the future. All right, that was mortgaging the future. Because when you look at the Broncos weren't there. That's the thing. Why do you think I dislike the trade so much? The Broncos weren't there yet, okay? They weren't where the Rams were when they acquired Matthew Stafford. They weren't there, and we saw that this year. If the Broncos were there, Russell Wilson wouldn't have rolled them completely off of track. They still would have been in playoff contention. They definitely would have had a shot, and they would probably be alive week 18 if they were there. They're not. That was mortgaging the future for a guy who is one of the most sacked quarterbacks in NFL history, who will be the most sacked quarterback in NFL history in the next 3-4 years, I believe. And that's saying something because that's more than Brett Favre, who literally came out of retirement twice. I'm just saying, that's mortgaging the future. Trading away Noah Fant, your first-round pick. Trading away Shelby Harris, who is huge for your locker room. He's a leader. And, Drew Lock, you were done with. But trading those guys away and picks, that's mortgaging your future. If you didn't see the signs that Russell Wilson was starting to decline at the end of last year, you didn't see them. And you mortgaged the future because of it. Let's be honest here. The Broncos' move was nothing more than, basically they went all in trying to lure Aaron Rodgers to Denver. They got his buddy in Nathaniel Hackett. When they didn't get Aaron Rodgers, they panicked. So now all of a sudden, the fans are thinking they're going to get Rodgers. The media is going crazy. Rodgers going to Denver. Rodgers signs with the Packers. And now the Packers are the Broncos are in a weird place because they hired a coach just to lure Aaron Rodgers there. They didn't get Aaron Rodgers, and now they're like, oh, this Russell Wilson stuff is going on. Let's go and offer picks and, try to save face. Big name, marketable. Let's see what happens. It failed miserably. Okay, so I don't hear enough of that. That's mortgaging the future. And then the Browns. How many picks did they give? They gave up 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, who had 26, 27 cases against him. That's mortgaging the future. And furthermore, Deshaun Watson was a fully guaranteed contract. So if you want to tell me that the Rams mortgaged the future for Matthew Stafford, then what are you calling the Browns doing? Because even though they're starting to come into their own, it's a little too late. Deshaun Watson, I don't think, is throwing for 200 yards this year. And up until this game, he really had not looked very good. That's mortgaging the future. But do you still do it? I don't know if I would have done it with Watson. Probably not, for how much that would have cost and just everything going on in the background. But why are we sitting here saying that the Rams mortgage the future, the Rams, traded all their picks away when they have a second rounder this year. They have a third rounder this year. And let's be honest here, that's not their biggest issue. The Rams' biggest issue was the fact that they were injured. Right out of the gate, Brian Allen gets hurt in the first game. Joe Noteboom gets hurt in the first game. David Edwards gets hurt. Like, all these guys were getting hurt on the offensive line. They couldn't gel. You had this brand new offensive line without Corbett and Whitworth. You desperately need all the time in the world to gel. They couldn't gel. The Rams did not go 5-11, potentially 6-11 or 5-12 because of the fact they traded away picks. That happened because, and I also got to say, they don't lack depth on the level that people think. When your depth and depth upon that depth gets hurt, there's nothing you can do. And that's what happened. The Rams got very banged up and they lost their depth because their depth was injured. They were taking guys off the practice squad, guys that were trying to graduate from police academies. I just don't think people get it. So next year, they could be a lot better. I would not be surprised. I don't know. I'm tired of hearing these narratives, man. It's so, like, exhausting. It's the same thing all the time. Oh, they traded away all their picks for Stat Padford. Well, I mean, you were wrong because he ended up winning the Super Bowl, but God forbid you ever admit that. I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, it just, the officiating this year has driven me mad. The injuries this year have driven me mad. The narratives this year. That's the worst part, is when your team isn't very good. Now all of a sudden these people that don't follow your team and now have an opinion, and now you have to hear it. So that's the way that works, right? So tonight we got Bills and Bengals. The Bills are 12-3. They head to Cincinnati to take on the 11-4 Bengals. 8:30 Eastern time on ABC, ESPN. And the Bengals are underdogs in this game. Technically, the favorites because they are 1.5. Oh no, Buffalo's actually just 1.5. Okay, so yeah, Buffalo's the favorite in this game. 1.5 points. Spread. I'm taking the Bengals at home. I'm taking the Bengals away. I think the Bengals are the better team. I think they're playing very good football right now. They've gotten hot at the right time. I still would like to see them get the ground game going more for sure, but these are both teams that have won all 5 of the last 5 games. The Bengals are averaging 26.1 points per game. The Bills 28. The Bills are allowing 17.5 to the Bengals 20.4 in total yards. The Bills average 411.9 a game to the Bengals 385.2, and total yards allowed. The Bengals are allowing just a tick more than 6 per game more than the Bills. The Bills are projected by ESPN Pick Center to win this game 24.5 to 23.5, and the over-under is 49.5. I'm going to take the over on that, and I'm going to take the Bengals money line in this one if you're better. I think the Bengals right now are playing really good football. I think Joe Burrow is very confident right now, and he has every right to be. He's over 4,000 yards for the year, 34 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Believe it or not, that's a better year than Josh Allen. So that's that. Devin Singletary has been running the ball well, but once again, I mentioned earlier, the Bills just do not like to run the ball. I don't know why. They get, good contribution out of Singletary. They got some good stuff out of James Cook, but for whatever reason, they just don't like to run the ball. So until they do, I can't really buy into that. Joe Mixon hasn't had his best season either. They haven't really run the ball a ton. They've been using a lot more Samaje Perine. And Higgins went over 1,000 yards this year. Chase was hurt. So I think with this Bengals game, I think you're going to look at the Bengals to win this game. I think they'll take over the second seed. I think they're the better team right now. I think Buffalo really misses Von Miller. And I do think they're going to be able to get after Burrow. keep in mind, big loss. They did lose Lyle Collins. Okay. They did. I still think they're the better team though. So maybe that's the deciding factor. Maybe I'm overlooking it, but I think there is a very good chance the Bengals, who are 5-1 at home, hang on and win this game. I think it's going to be a fun one tonight. I really think it's going to be a good one. I think it's definitely going to be as good as advertised. When I saw this on the calendar, I got really excited because this is the type of Monday Night Football game you want. I feel like Monday Night Football, since they can't get flexed and every team has to have at least one nationally televised game, they kind of just, they just throw it out there, right? They're just like, you know what? We'll just put this game out there and no one wants to watch it. But like you need to have, you have to have at least one team. You have to have at least one televised game for every single team in the league. That is the rule. And so I feel like in that aspect, they're just like, yeah, we'll just throw them on Monday Night Football because you can't flex out of Monday Night Football for whatever reason. They just don't allow it. So normally you don't get good Monday Night Football games. We're lucky to get a good one because we're definitely doing that. This is going to be a good game. And it has playoff, stakes to it. Obviously, both teams are making it regardless. But that's how that goes. For Exotic over there, who just asked if I could go over the NFL stat leaders, Patrick Mahomes is leading the NFL over 5,000 passing yards. He's having quite the season with a 67% completion percentage, 40 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Right now, he's got to be the favorite for MVP, I'd imagine. Then you have Tom Brady with 46-10. He has a 66.6 completion percentage, 24 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Justin Herbert, 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, has 4,466 yards, followed by Kirk Cousins, 4,322 yards, 28 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So if you're looking at the touchdowns leaders in passing touchdowns, it's Patrick Mahomes with 40, Burrow with 34, Josh Allen with 32, and Jared Goff and Geno Smith. Can't believe I just said that. Jared Goff and Geno Smith are tied for 4th in touchdown passes. Kirk Cousins he's in 5th with 28. Aaron Rodgers and Tua Tagovailoa tied for that there with 25. Brady and Derek Carr and Trevor Lawrence all have 24. Justin Herbert has 23. Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott have 22. And then the next is Andy Dalton and Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson with 17. The interception leader this year, Derek Carr, is tied with Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott. You want to talk about something that actually concerns me? If you are a fan of the Cowboys, if you want the Cowboys to win a playoff game, it's Dak Prescott's turnovers. I don't know what it is this year. I thought this guy was a really, good decision maker, precision passer. He has turned the ball over at a clip I have not seen. And that does worry me for the Cowboys' sake. I think they're really going to have to pound the rock with Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. And, Dak Prescott's going to have to take care of the ball. Or they're going to be an early out. Looking at the running game, Josh Jacobs is going to have the rushing title, barring a complete collapse in Nick Chubb's, monster upcoming game. Josh Jacobs has 1,608 yards. He's got 12 rushing touchdowns. Okay. So that's that. Nick Chubb has 1,448 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns. Derrick Henry has 1,429 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley with 1,312 yards and 10 touchdowns. And then Miles Sanders has 1,236 yards and 11 rushing touchdowns. Justin Fields has more rushing yards than Dalvin Cook, and he's got the same amount of touchdowns with 8. Travis Etienne had himself a huge comeback season, a rookie season. I think technically this is rookie season. So I think he could end up winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. 1,100 rushing yards, 5 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey with 1,094 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. Aaron Jones with 1,073 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Jamal Williams with 994 with 15 touchdowns. Williams will get to that 1,000 mark with 6 more yards this upcoming weekend. Tony Pollard, 988 rushing yards, 9 touchdowns. That yards per carry average is nuts. He's only run the ball 186 times. The only one who's even close to that is the fact that Aaron Jones has only run it 201 times. So that was that. Ramondre Stevenson at 986 and 5 touchdowns. Najee Harris, 954 and 6 touchdowns. Damian Pierce was placed on IR. Great season out of him. Unfortunately, he's going to fall short of 1,000 yards with 939. Kenneth Walker, the third, I thought was the best running back in the draft. 9 touchdowns, 936 rushing yards on 199 attempts. So really good year for him. I think he's going to get to 1,000 if that Rams defense that we saw against the Chargers shows up. Tyler Algier is at 900 rushing yards with 3 touchdowns on 186 carries. Algier has the same amount of carries as Tony Pollard, has 88 yards fewer, but is having quite the year for the rookie. Definitely like what I'm seeing out of him. We mentioned him earlier in the show, and I think Algier definitely deserves some credit there. So Tyler Algier with 900 there. We'll see where that goes. He just needs a 100-yard game, and he hits 1,000 his rookie year. Pretty good feat there. Eckler with 881 and 13 touchdowns. Elliott with 866 and 12 touchdowns. Jonathan Taylor with 861 and 4 touchdowns. Dante Foreman with 846 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. And Raheem Mostert with 820 and 3 touchdowns. How about Brian Robinson, though? Almost 800 yards. Missed the beginning of the season because he got shot. Came back, and he has almost 800 yards and 2 touchdowns. So shout out to him. That's the run game. Then we look over at the wide receivers and the receiving, or just the receiving, I guess. There was a one time where Tyreek Hill and Justin Jefferson were on pace to break the single season receiving yards record. Okay. There was a time when that was the case. That's not the time anymore. Looks like Cooper Kupp last year. Doesn't look like he's going to get passed by either of them. But Justin Jefferson with 1,771 yards, 124 receptions, 8 touchdowns. He slowed down a little bit with 15 receiving yards this past week. Tyreek Hill also got kind of held in check. 117 receptions for 1,687 and 7 touchdowns. Devontae Adams was back on, at his own way and everything. I mean, he blew up yesterday. 1,443, 95 receptions, 14 touchdowns. A.J. Brown with 1,401 and 11 touchdowns on 84 receptions. Stephon Diggs has yet to play his second to last game, so this is going to go up. He's got 101 receptions, 1,325 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Jalen Waddle, what a season for Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Waddle with 70 catches, went for 1,312 and 8 touchdowns. Insane season for him. You look at your, receiving yards after the catch, 810 out of Austin Eckler, 659 out of Christian McCaffrey, 637 out of Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, 597. Unreal. These guys are crazy. I mean, the thing that bums me is that Cooper Kupp doesn't have a 1,000-yard season, but I mean, clearly was on pace to have a monster year before the injury. So that, that sucks. Shout out to CeeDee Lamb. I think he's made significant strides. It's time to finally start calling him a top 10 wide receiver because, man, he had a really good season. It's not over either. 102 receptions for 1,307 and 8 touchdowns, becoming Dak's primary target. Travis Kelce with 104 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 12 touchdowns. We got Devontae Smith going for 88 receptions, 1129, and 7 touchdowns. So 1,000-yard season back-to-back for Devontae Smith. Mike Evans went over 1,000 yards with his crazy performance on Sunday, going for 203 touchdowns. He has 11-24 on 77 catches, and he's got 6 touchdowns to boot. Terry McLaurin also found his way to the 1,000-yard mark, 74 catches, 117 yards, 117 yards. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown with 100 catches for 1,112 with 6 touchdowns. Amari Cooper had 9 touchdowns. Amari Cooper has to be one of the quietest studs in this league. Like, no one talks about him. And the guy almost has 10 touchdowns. He's got 1,100 yards and 76 receptions. What he's doing in Cleveland is just not being talked about. But he's having a very good season. Another guy who's having a very good season, I mean, T. Higgins, 73 catches for 1,022 and 7 touchdowns. But Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets goes for 1,014 yards, 74 receptions, 4 touchdowns for a team that had 3 different quarterbacks. It was a revolving door. What he was able to do as a rookie, not really surprising. He is an outstanding talent, and I'm not shocked. There's only 2 more 1,000-yard receivers. Christian Kirk got a lot of flack for how much money he made this offseason, but he backed it up on the field with 78 catches for 1,009 yards and 7 touchdowns. And technically, this would be, with Week 18 left to go, this would be the 16-game, thing. So, the rest is somewhat asterisk, but I still think it should count, obviously, and it will. But for those 16-game purists out there, these are your 1,000-yard receivers. And then DK Metcalf with 1,008 yards, 6 touchdowns, 87 receptions. Guys that could make the 1,000-yard club right now include Tyler Lockett with 979, Chris Olave with 982, Chris Godwin with 968, Jamar Chase with 960, Brandon Ayuk with 956, TJ Hawkinson. I don't know why the Lions traded him. He would be very much useful right now going into the playoffs, potentially. Hawkinson has a chance at 1,000 yards. He's at 898. Juju Smith-Schuster, 898. Michael Pittman, 895. Then you got DJ Moore at 878. Mike Williams at 863. Mark Andrews at 847. Deontay Johnson at 844. Jerry Jeudy at 818. And Cooper Kupp with 812. He has no chance, obviously, because he's not playing, but wanted to give him a shout out because that was ridiculous. He did that. He had so much time, and he would have, gone on a tear. Your tackle leaders, it's always going to be Foye Oluokun. He is an incredible tackler for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's got 171 tackles on the year. He just needs 29 to break 200 on the season. So there's that. But yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole list. Interception leaders, Minka Fitzpatrick last night sealed the deal with the interception on Tyler Huntley. He also tied 3 other defensive backs for the most interceptions this season. We'll see who finishes. Maybe one of them gets it in Week 18, but Minka has 6, Gardner Johnson has 6, Justin Simmons and Tariq Woolen all have 6 interceptions. As far as return interception yards, Jacoby Durant is in first place. He's got 3. He's got a pick 6. He's 151 interception yards. He leads the league in that category. So that's that. As far as punt return goes, just in case anybody's interested, as far as yards, Jalen Darden, Marcus Jones, Ray McLeod were your top 3 punt returners of the year. And as far as kickers go, just to give them, a shout, Justin Tucker went 34 of 40. Daniel Carlson, 32 of 35. Eddie Pinheiro, 32 of 34. Nick Folk, 31 of 36. Jason Myers, 30 of 32. Ryan Suckup, 30 of 37. Young Wei Koo, 29 of 34. Brett Maher, 29 of 32. Chase McLaughlin, 29 of 35. Matt Gay was 25 of 27. I mean, all that. And then let's see. Lastly, we have the sack leaders. Nick Bosa has 17 and a half sacks on the year. Hassan Reddick, the guy that I wanted over Von Miller, by the way, because I didn't want to wait all day for Von Miller to sign. Hassan Reddick had a pretty decent year with 16 sacks. Matt Judon with 15 and a half. Myles Garrett with 15. Chris Jones with 13. Parsons with 13. Brian Burns with 12 and a half. Alex Highsmith and Quinnen Williams with 12. Max Crosby, Daniil Hunter, Dayron Payne and Josh Uche with 11 and a half. Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, and Josh Sweat all with 11. J.J. Watt finishes his last season potentially if he doesn't have another sack with 10 and a half. And lastly, you have Yannick Ngakoue with 9.5, Justin Houston, Jerry Hughes, Uchenna Nwosu, and Zadarius Smith with 9, Cameron Hayward, Cameron Jordan, and Preston Smith, and Darrell Taylor all with 11.5. Dorrance Armstrong, Danico Autry, DeForest Buckner, Bradley Chubb, Leonard Floyd, James Houston, Khalil Mack, Von Miller, and Montez Sweat all had 8. So those are all your stats. Figured we'd go through all that. What's going on with Odell? His hype died down a lot. Yeah, so, I mean, he's a free agent. It doesn't look like he's going to sign. I don't think he's trying to join a team right now. I don't think a team's trying to pick him up. He just wasn't ready. It's a lot of rehab, obviously, dealing with the torn ACL. So, I think this is somebody that's going to regroup in the off season. He's going to find his team. He's going to feel better and sign with that team. I think that's where we're at this point. I don't see anything imminent happening, and I don't see any moves happening. I think it's more likely that Rob Gronkowski comes back, signs with Tampa, than it is that Odell comes back and signs with the team. That's kind of where I see it right now. I don't know. So, yeah, I mean, for those of you who are new here, welcome. Appreciate you. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. This is JE Radio, not to be confused with JE Live. JE Radio is when I'm going to be going live early in the morning. So it's like my talk show, essentially. At some point or another, I'm going to have people calling in. It'll be fun. I started it today. It's a new project I'm doing this year. We have a bunch of new stuff. So, excited to kind of get this off the ground and just, it allows me to be able to talk about, other things, not just Rams and Jets related that, for the channel, but, other teams, around the league and everything. So it's, it's fun. Today's Monday, so, most people are back to work and everything, but appreciate everyone watching and listening and all of that. For as far as games that I'm excited for tonight, I mean, first off, Tulane and USC I'll be watching probably at 1. I think USC is obviously going to win. I've made that pretty clear, but Lakers and Hornets should be an interesting one later tonight at 7. Lakers are 15-21. LeBron James went nuclear in the last game against Cleveland. So, or not Cleveland, against Atlanta. So, we'll see there. Anthony Davis is on the mend. We'll see what ends up happening. Golden Knights taking on the Avalanche. As a Knights fan, I'm definitely looking forward to that. 9 on ESPN Plus. Aside from that, I mean, there's not a ton today. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that Pelicans 76ers game could be a lot of fun too. Pelicans are a lot better than people give them credit for. 76ers are always fun. I mean, I love watching Joel Embiid. So, that's a game that I could look at. The Suns and Knicks is on a 3 for whatever reason. That could be an interesting game. Aside from that, though, Heat and Clippers at 10:30 if you're up, that could be a game. Minnesota and Denver. I mean, Minnesota is one of those teams that just scores a lot, so they're kind of fun to watch. But aside from that, that's pretty much it. NHL is pretty dead today, aside from the Golden Knights and Colorado game at 9, which should be a banger. Penguins Bruins actually has the 2:00 slot Winter Classic. They're playing at Fenway Park. So that's pretty cool. Kind of low key wish I could go to something like that. That's a really cool event. They play outside. They're going to play in Fenway Park. I'll probably tune in for that. As far as men's basketball tonight, West Virginia takes on Oklahoma State. The number 1 Purdue team is going to take on Rutgers. College football, like I already mentioned with USC and Tulane. You also have Penn State and Utah at 5 in the Rose Bowl. So that should be fun. I don't know why it has the 5 o'clock slot. I feel like that should be like more, prime time, especially because it doesn't look like there's anything for prime time. So, that's right, because the NFL. That makes sense. So yeah, Utah and Penn State are going to go at it 5 on ESPN. LSU, Purdue in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. I feel like there's so many different bowls. I mean, there's like 40 something. So LSU versus Purdue, Mississippi State versus Illinois in the Relia Quest Bowl, and then the Goodyear Cotton Bowl is USC and Tulane. So those are the games on today. For those of you who are college football fans, Grayson McCall of Coastal Carolina, the quarterback, really good quarterback prospect. I actually really like him for the NFL. I think he projects decently well. He actually went into the transfer portal for Coastal Carolina, and believe it or not, he is coming out of the transfer portal. So I think he's going to stay at Coastal Carolina. There were rumors that he was going to go to Notre Dame potentially. There were some other, teams interested, but it looks like he's going to stay at home with Coastal Carolina. I think it's a good move for him. I'm always a fan of guys that stay with their team. Now I understand if you're in a bad situation and you got to transfer, you got to do your thing. You got to transfer, but I always appreciate the loyalty. And speaking of which, as a Kansas football fan, I got to say, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to try and pluck Jalen Daniels away from Kansas. And if he stays there, I mean, he just, to me, he earns a lot of credit for that. Really just trying to be a culture changer, trying to be a leader, sticking by a program. That's big because there's going to be some big dogs trying to get Jalen Daniels. If you didn't see him in the Liberty Bowl against Arkansas, then you missed out because the guy is an outstanding college quarterback. And I think he's truly, this upcoming year is going to be big for him because I think he's going to need to learn how to process the field quicker. And I think once he can do that, you're going to start to look at him as a potential top NFL quarterback prospect. Speaking of which, look, Ohio State's done. They got eliminated, but it was a valiant effort. And C.J. Stroud looked fantastic. I think Stroud and Bryce Young are by far and away the 2 best quarterbacks in this draft. I don't think it's relatively close. If you get one of them, I think you're good. Personally, I like Bryce Young more, but I think C.J. Stroud definitely shows you a lot. I think he's more prototypical for the size that you want at quarterback, but Bryce Young, I think, can be very similar to like what you see with Jalen Hurts, but a notch above that, I think. That's his ceiling. I think the Texans are going to get him, and I think they're going to reunite him with John Mechie, who, don't forget, Mechie was a 2nd-round pick. He battled cancer, and it looks like he beat it. So, I mean, he'll be back next year. So looking forward to that, but just, figured we would go live and talk, early in the morning and make a new show out of it, new topic and everything. But I mean, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Almost an hour and a half, we'll see how well this show goes and everything, but more content at the very least. It can't be a bad thing. But appreciate you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys soon. Later, folks.